Football will be South Louisiana this weekend. On Saturday, it'll feature a top 5 matchup in Baton Rouge with LSU hosting number 1 Alabama. On Sunday, it'll be the New Orleans Saints, leaders of the NFC South, hosting the Los Angeles Rams, who moved to 8-0 yesterday with a win over Aaron Rodgers and the Green Bay Packers. Sports Illustrated gets their coverage of college football from one of the best, Ross Dellenger, who's with us every Monday morning here on OTB. Bama week, Ross. How we feeling, Deli?
Well, I'm trying to get up, getting some coffee on, Mondays.
Yeah. Bringing the energy, Ross. I love it. Big week.
Yes, I know.
Yeah.
Don't I sound so excited and pumped up? I know. Yeah.
This is exactly what we were looking for out of this segment, Ross. Tell me, let me ask you this first. Is Bama beatable?
Oh. Yeah, okay, so here's the thing. For a while, I thought that Bama wasn't beatable unless, with Tua. With Tua, I didn't really think Bama was beatable. But, over the last few days, I've kind of read some stuff, and I'm seeing, and I don't remember who tweeted it out yesterday, but I thought it was a really good tweet, and it was something that really kind of had me sitting back a little bit, that Alabama, the best, I think it was the best pass defense Alabama's played is ranked like 109th nationally or 95th or whatever. And it's like, LSU's like number 24 in pass defense. I was just starting to think in my head, like, man, I wonder if it's one of those situations where Alabama's schedule really is, has been pretty terrible, and could even with Tua, could somebody knock them off? And obviously, of their remaining regular season, this would be the game, at Tiger Stadium at night against LSU's defense. Maybe, I think you're going to have, if Tua is playing, which it obviously sounds like he's playing, but if he does play the whole game and it doesn't get hurt or something, I think you've got to have some turnovers, though, and that's the big thing. LSU defense has got to force turnovers, whether that's in the form of fumbles or interceptions. But I'm starting more and more to think that they're beatable, but it's just I still think when a Bama with Tua is just really close to unbeatable, but I guess we haven't seen them play a defense that's like LSU's.
Yeah. So
that is one of the things that has me thinking that, well, maybe with 3-4 turnovers, we could see a potential upset,
Yeah, and Ross, it sounds like you're kind of struggling with the same thing that I am, which is that with a lack of quality opponents, you kind of struggle to separate the reality from what maybe is just kind of exaggerated a bit because they've played so many bad teams. We'll kind of try to parse through that throughout the entire week. Would you say, I heard somebody say this is basically a national championship game because this is the toughest matchup that Alabama will have all year, even like in a playoff, in a championship situation? Yeah. Do you think there's a sketchier spot for Bama than this one?
Well, I think a lot of that has to do not just with the opponent, but the location, and just the environment. Because, there's an argument to be made that this will be Alabama's toughest test of the entire season. Even getting Georgia if they do get Georgia in the SEC championship game, I think anybody would probably tell you that going on the road with this, at night in Tiger Stadium with this LSU against this LSU team against this defense is probably more difficult. You start looking at the playoff, and Notre Dame is just not that great. It doesn't seem like they're not that impressive. And you're going to be playing on a neutral field. And if you run into Georgia again in the playoff, which I guess it would be an impossibility unless you lose them in the championship game or something like that, some crazy stuff would happen. But when you start looking at the playoff, Ohio State, I thought for a while, I think I told you guys this last week. I thought for a while it was Alabama and Ohio State at the top, and then a big drop off, and Ohio State loses at Purdue. So there's something to be said for that. This very well could be Alabama's toughest test. The only thing that pops into my mind, because of the way that Clemson lately has been playing and because of the way that Michigan lately has been playing, I don't really think a whole lot of teams want to see them, even if they're on a neutral field. So, I mean, yeah, I still think there's an argument to be made that this is it. This is it for Alabama. They win this one, they win the next whatever it will be, 6-7 games.
Talking to Ross Dellenger at Ross Dellenger on Twitter. Catch his work now in Sports Illustrated. Big national guy. Ross, how does LSU's offense look to have success? Because that is what I would say is my biggest worry. Because you got to think the defense is going to play well, and if the defense doesn't, then you're dead in the water anyway. But I like the defensive matchup for the most part. I guess I like special teams. Actually, I like LSU better in that regard. But offensively is my major point of concern. So how do you think they look to deal with an offensive line that has been leaky at times this year?
Well, that's been the concern, when LSU's played Alabama now for a long time. You look back at some of the points LSU scored. Last year 10 points, the year before 0 points, the year before 13 points, I think. It's just been a struggle against Alabama. I think in the last 4 games, LSU's averaging something in between 8 to 10 points against Alabama, and this one is this, as you mentioned, it's the same issue. Can LSU move the ball against Alabama? Just every year we have this question, and I think a lot of it has to do with the teams that succeed against Alabama don't sit there and run the ball against them for 250 yards a game and 60 times a game. And that's how LSU, as you very well know, T-Bob, especially under the former coach, that's how LSU operated. And that's why I think, when LSU and Alabama met, Alabama always had this big advantage because in a lot of ways they're the same team with similar talent, but LSU always had this mindset of doing what Alabama stops best. And now they have a new coaching staff, obviously, a new offensive coordinator. And, they've branched out a little bit. They're throwing the ball a little more. They have a quarterback, too, that is a little more mobile probably and makes some plays and some key. And that's what it really boils down to, guys, is Joe Burrow. And can he make plays in the clutch, Can he make plays against the rush? And LSU quarterbacks, man, the numbers are stunning against Alabama. I think it's the last 3 starting quarterbacks for LSU in the last 4 meetings with Alabama. I've done the combined numbers are just jaw-dropping. They've completed 38% of their passes, something like that. I mean, it's rough. The TD to INTs, a 3-to-1, INT to TD ratio. I mean, it's bad. So it kind of all boils down to your quarterback, man. And can he make plays? Can he make plays with his feet, which always gives Alabama trouble? You can't just sit there and pound the ball 50, 60 times a game. And LSU didn't do that last year. Y'all remember, they chunked it up last year in Tuscaloosa. And if Danny Etling and the receivers can hook up on probably 2 of those passes, the game is completely different. So it should be interesting.
Yeah, they actually outgained Alabama last year, which I think a lot of people forget. Ross, final one here.
They beat them.
You had an excellent long read, I think it was last week, where you were hanging out with police officers on game day, getting kind of inside look into what they have to deal with. What are they expecting for this Alabama game Saturday?
Insanity is how they kind of put it. They're bracing for things, and it was really cool and to spend a day with them. It's a story I've wanted to do for a while now. I never could because at the Advocate I always had to cover the game, but I was able to spend 6-7 hours with them walking around campus, seeing how their schedule is, and it was really cool. And a lot of the stuff I saw was them preparing for the next week, for this week, for this Alabama game. Everything was kind of centered on that. All the focus was kind of on that, was this Alabama game and bracing for it. So they're going to have about, I think, probably an increase of about 25 to 30% of officers on campus. And they don't like to reveal exactly how many officers total will they have on campus, but it'll be more than 300, maybe
Wow.
way more than 300. So they're bracing for it, man, and they're expecting an insane crowd that is probably comparable to the crowd that we saw, 2 years ago against Alabama, and before that 2 years ago against Alabama. So it's always the game. It's been the game for a long time here.
Delly, enjoy the week. We'll talk to you next week.
All right, see you later.
See you later.
All right, Delly.
Ross Dellenger from Sports Illustrated checking in. We'll talk to him next Monday, recapping this LSU Bama game.